it's not necessarily kind of the same. I have to take issue with the really lazy comment to say that Ireland is draining resources from member states. Ireland is a net contributor to the European Union. Ireland has a fair taxation system. And whenever we talk about this in the context of European tax harmonisation, Ireland's always been painted as the bad guy, and absolutely scurrilous remarks are talked about, are used, but no one ever looks at the internals of the big member states. And what we have at the weekend is a partial agreement across two pillars between the G7. So the seven big economies. There's 139 countries as part of this discussion. And trying to compare the Irish economy, which is a small economy with a population of less than 5 million people. We're part of the European Union, a lot smaller than France, a lot smaller than Germany, the UK, Japan, everyone else. We have to be able to use tax as part of our dynamic, attractive policies, because we don't have the economies of scale, we don't have the geography, and we don't have the resources that other member states do. And we also don't have the ability to make sweeping declarations at international summits.
Yeah, but hang on, a 2.5% difference. What would be the impact on Ireland if you went from 12.5% to 15%?
Yeah, in monetary terms, it could be about €800 billion. It is substantial. We are a very favoured destination for a lot of multinational companies, nothing to do with our tax rate. The fact that we're the only English-speaking common law jurisdiction in the EU with one of the highest third-level education is certainly part of it. There's a Microsoft are in my own constituency. They're employing 72 different nationalities, 2,500 people. Those individuals and that company has been there for over 30 years for many reasons. But any change, we accept that change is coming in terms of corporate tax. We accept that, and we're preparing for change. But we think anyone saying that, well, this has been decided, or that this is something that everyone else just has to get on board, has to be a bit clear. Ireland's played a very productive part of this process since 2013. We have gone through the ringer. Bear in mind, we came out of the financial crisis after shouldering a lot of the responsibility for the entire European Union, not just our own economy. And we've come back with every review with flying colours. And that's why we approach this session. Our own finance minister was at the G7 meeting at the weekend in his role as president of the Eurogroup. We'll approach it proactively, productively, but we have to be aware that there's a long way to go in this. And yeah, we want to make sure companies pay their fair price, but we also just don't want the world to become so imbalanced that it's solely about the largest economies.
Quentin Parino?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, we're talking about effective tax rate. So Ireland has a 12.5 nominal tax rates, but it's actually offering lower effective tax rates to a number of multinationals. We've seen recent report of Microsoft not paying a single euro on corporate income tax in Ireland last year, I think.
That's correct.
But to be fair, that report is disputed, and we see a lot of those are attractive tax rates for initial investment or initial relocation, something that's very common, particularly in France, and we see it down to individual department levels. But we see the effective tax rate, and it's constantly put out by the OECD, that Ireland does meet its responsibilities, and we enforce our 12.5% assiduously, and we continue to play our fair share and our part within both the European Union and the wider global economic community.
But Neale, do you take the point that some people are miffed when they see these big corporations doing business elsewhere in the European Union? The transactions are happening elsewhere in the European Union, but the tax is being paid in Ireland. What isn't that the root of the problem? That globalization really changes the way we should look at tax.
And indeed, Ireland, through this process, has been quite clear that we support the idea of market jurisdiction and making sure that particularly digital companies do pay into their markets. We are concerned about the American suggestion because it has been outlined by all the other speakers. It allows for loopholes and allows for certain companies to avoid them. But we're contributing to that. We understand the need for that, and we support the need for that as well.
Quentin Parino?
Yes, I think it all boils down again to a philosophical, vision of what we think. What is competition? When we base our competition on tax policies, it's a situation where everyone loses because states are denied revenues. They can't invest enough in hospitals, in schools, in infrastructure, and even for companies, this is bad. That speech is not only Oxfam; it's also Janet Yellen's speech saying that we need a win-win competition where we compete on infrastructure, where we compete on the skills of our workers, and this is a positive competition. And just to say one thing, because as I said before, there are two pillars in the negotiation, right? One on the minimum tax that could yield, tens of billions of dollars in revenues. The other one on making sure that high profit margin companies are paying taxes. This one could yield 1 to 5 billion euros in revenue. So that's much smaller. So we need to make sure that the minimum effective tax rate is ambitious enough.